All right, we're here today at Greentown Labs in Somerville. This is a startup incubator, and we're here to see Leanne Cushing from domovi. Come with me. All right, so you know what an incubator is, right? You've seen Silicon Valley, where they put a bunch of startup, like software companies in someone's bedroom. This is a little bit better than that. This is a bunch of companies working on similar kinds of problems, and they can share resources, and they can share people, so they can talk to each other, meet, and talk about problems that they're having, work things out. It's gonna be really cool to see what's going on in here. So if you didn't figure it out from the name already, Greentown Labs, this incubator is focused on green tech solutions to problems plaguing the world. Pretty cool. I'm with Leanne Cushing. She's a co-founder of domovi here at Greentown Labs. You might recognize her because she's been on BattleBots, what, second season now?
Yep, second season on Discovery
with
Channel.
Valkyrie.
Yep.
I guess now you can tell us how you did. People probably know from watching.
Well, so far there's been only one fight on for us, and it was a loss against my good friends, Hypershock. We have another fight this coming Friday, and then I know that we have some more fun after the Shark Week break.
Okay.
So
that must be tough because you can't talk about what's happening, right? It's all like you can't
Reddit
disclose.
is great. I really enjoy it because like they say the most ridiculous stuff and their opinions, and you just get to be like, oh, I can't wait. And the same thing now on the Facebook group is like we'll just like send like banter back and forth, like me and my co-founder of just like, oh my god, they think this, or oh my god, they think this, or just like other teams that we're friends with, just like waiting for them to like have their fight, so then like the internet of people who think they know better than the builders shuts up, which is great.
So now you've basically been through 2 rounds that they've shot?
Yeah, well, like,
one which has been public and now one which is not
right,
yet.
They'll have another one that's like just coming out this week, and I'm not allowed to say how I did that because spoilers, but like, it's fine.
And then depending on how that went, you might be back for another shooting,
yep.
And usually that's done in Las Vegas or LA?
So yeah, they do, everything is just all one go, 2 weeks in Long Beach. Our venue is actually sold, so we'll see where we are next year if there is another season. But yeah, like we film just straight 2 weeks. Like, you know, we have multiple matches, usually a match every 2 to 3 days, and then it just keeps going. And obviously you get more fights if you are doing well, and then you're able to get into that top 24 or top 16.
What got you into being a BattleBot designer and like the whole thing? Like, is this just something you've always followed, or is it something that you just like fell into?
So I'm like co-founder. He actually liked it as a kid. I didn't. I did first robotics in high school,
okay.
And everyone always compared it to BattleBots. And I always liked designing and building robots for that, like accomplishing tasks, stacking boxes, hurting balls, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a way of basically like turning that up a notch now that I actually do have an engineering degree, a lot of material science knowledge. And after a handful of years being a mentor, you want to play again. Mm-hmm. And so BattleBots was a way for me to get into that.
Interesting. Now, is it the kind of thing, if people are watching and they want to get into BattleBots, is the kind of thing that like can become a career, or is it just like a sideline gig?
I wish it was a career.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we basically do run a separate business as team captains, at least. Like we're usually the ones that do a lot of the back end, like management, accounting, sponsor research, research and outreach, all that.
Oh wait, so this is complicated stuff. This isn't, I mean, it was already complicated. You had to make a robot, but now you're talking about, this is a business. You have to make sure that you're getting sponsors for your robot and all that stuff.
Yeah, and like there are some teams that don't. There are some self-funded teams like self-made millionaires or what have you. They have no problem just like throwing cash at their design. Mm-hmm. But my whole team, we're all hardware engineers, and our budget in Boston is not great to be able to afford the $30,000 machine we have.
Wow.
Yeah, I think a lot about how much I've spent on my robot and how I could have paid off my car instead.
Wow.
But yeah, so it's kind of just, for me at least, I take on most of that burden. A lot of other teams, you know, there's just a different skill set per person, and so maybe some of that's taken on by someone else. But like my team at Alex does all the fan outreach, social media, and sponsorship. I don't want to do it, so that's great. Okay. I fundraise for the startup. I don't need to fundraise for that as much, but I do know how to sell it, and I do know how to make it so our sponsors sound great, which could rattle them off. But yeah, so it's sort of a nice balance, but also you do learn a lot of things by the pressure and the way that BattleBots is ran that you can apply into either your job or a startup or whatever.
Now, let's talk about your startup. So you're not just an engineer making a robot, you're also doing something else. What is domovi?
So domovi is a new generation of smart home appliances is
Okay.
the idea. So white goods, like big sheet metal boxes, haven't really iterated much in about half a century, and I kind of got fed up with that.
Well, tell me what you mean. So you're talking about like washers and dryers,
Yep.
dishwashers, things like that.
Long term, looking at like less garbage, electrical stoves, medium form factor refrigerators that may or may not have a freezer for energy savings, because a lot of people are millennials are a lot of takeout or fresh food oriented, not so much the icebox freezer style dining that was the case a couple decades ago. And so I just started thinking of what if, and being in Boston, laundromats in the winter is terrible. Communal units, you already have enough reasons to hate your neighbors. And so I just started thinking there has to be some other way. And so all these old homes can't have like new plumbing dragged through them or new holes in walls in a closet and whatever. And so I was like, well, what if, similar to the European and UK market, you're able to do a washer-dryer combo that doesn't need that outer venting, and then combine it with a dishwasher. And so separate compartments.
Wait, slow down.
Oh.
Washer-dryer,
Yep.
that's hard enough, I know.
Yep.
You just said dishwasher?
Yes. So an all-in-one
same
washing
unit?
appliance. Yes. So the goal is that, like, you don't have like socks with glasses, so you can keep them separate. Food waste and lint just doesn't seem very appealing. But yeah, they're basically in the same form factor of like your normal drawbridge door dishwasher. You can have all three. It's just smaller loads for each, and so it's to accommodate anyone that has to usually use those communal units or laundromats.
That sounds brilliant. I mean, because if you're in a small apartment or whatever, you don't need, I mean, those take up a lot of space, first of all.
Exactly, and
you've got to
use it
get
less
rid of a
than
closet
10%
or something.
of the time. And if you look at the dollars per square foot in these cities, like in high density cities, you're like, that's a lot of wasted money and space. Like I just, that was the main idea it came from. And then also, like, you still have to be there and push buttons. You have to babysit it to take it in and out. And so we also have it intelligence enabled. So now you can start it when you're not there, set it on a schedule, have a conversation of what you wear. Like, I wear mostly dark clothes, so it's gonna know whenever Leanne starts a load, it's always cold water wash.
Interesting. So wait, normally you're right. You've got to put your clothes in the clothes washer, and then when they're done, switch them fairly quickly to the dryer so they don't get smelly, right?
Right.
You're talking about this machine would potentially wash my clothes and dry them without me having to switch them?
Exactly. Yep, and it does take a lot longer. Part of why the washer-dryer combo haven't really taken off in the US is because they take so long. They usually take like 4 to 6 hours for a large load. Our smaller units, like, it really depends on what the heating cycle is at. But like 2 to 4 hours is the average. And so if you're waiting for your laundry to be done, you notice that time. But if now you're running on a schedule of like, hey, I'll be home at 6 p.m., it knows to start between noon and 2. When you get home, you'll just know the impression is clean laundry. And you're using it in the middle of the day, which is where like off-peak residential areas is.
Right, I'm at work anyway or whatever. I don't care how long it takes.
Exactly. And the more passive drying means lower temps, so you're less likely to have shrinking with clothes, they last longer. And then obviously, like, the dryer fires are not very likely with the non-vented units because they're already a lot more delicate. And so that means, like, you don't have to worry of not being there. And also, we've learned with tearing apart other units, there are sensors in place to make sure, like, that stuff wouldn't happen.
I see. So these are going to be a lot smarter than today's dumb units, basically.
Exactly.
I mean, because basically they look the same as when I was a kid. I mean, there's just a bunch of dials, and then you tell it, like, 30 minutes, blah, 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 and then you let it go. So yours are going to have something smarter in them?
Oh yeah. Well, like, it's really not that much smarter than what already is in the units. It's just now we're switching up the way that the user interfaces and making it so you can have, like, by having it be connected, we're going to be able to do additional cycle testing when we have units in the wild, and then we can push an update.
Wait, are you talking like Tesla over-the-air updates so that it could get smarter potentially?
I mean, yeah, basically. Like, that's the idea would be, like, you can keep improving on the device rather than having to get a new one every couple of years. And then the other thing is, as we've been building it, we keep, why we're in Greentown Labs is we have the idea of water efficiency, energy efficiency, and sustainability. Energy efficiency is very expensive to cover very early on, so while that is a goal of ours, we need to be able to afford those regulation costs. And so we know that we know we have water efficiency, and we know that by having the units be built from, like, our initial design, like how we're thinking about it, we can make sure the components in it are recyclable at end of life. because no one thinks about cars and appliances at the end of the cycle where, you have to pay for it to be carried away and then it's going to go sit in a junkyard somewhere. And I don't want the world to be like WALL-E, which means you don't have these towers of appliances sitting in spaces, because those spaces might actually want to be used at some point, and now you have a very uphill battle to get them to be out of there.
As a woman in engineering, what's it like? Because I know that, I was just reading an interview with Bill Gates, and he was like, when we started our company, it was all men, And so have you felt like there's a shift going on, that there's more women getting into engineering, or do you still feel like you're kind of the lone wolf there?
I wish there were more women in engineering. I hear stories regularly from women who have decided to leave engineering. I've been trying to build a network of all of the passionate builder and engineering designers that I'm aware of that are women across the country that I meet. There's not enough. I know that at the level of FIRST Robotics, which is high school, there's a lot more girls involved now than there were at my age, so that would be hoping towards a positive trend. But I find that it's just regular that girls are told you can't do this. And I think in the field I'm just stubborn, and I've been told that in a lot of my jobs of you can't do this, or this is not for a woman, or blah blah blah. And I've just been no, because I know I'm good at this, I'm going to keep going, but a lot of people may not have that.
Advisors and teachers, or?
I got it from a couple of professors that I will hopefully one day be able to get my revenge on. I have the goal of renaming the auditorium they have to walk by, and that's with the hope of ever having enough financial success. But that's one of my goals, because they're both tenure, so they could say whatever they want. And one told me to go to the art school next door. At RIT, and then the other one just told me I should just quit.
That must be, I'm so glad that you're a feisty person and you fought past that, but that must be really hard to hear.
It's really frustrating, and it's also hard because I went to an event in Indiana for robotics and heard from both middle school and high school girls that they're also being told that because they're girls they can't do it. And them asking me they just assume boys know how to use the tools, but then they second guess me, and the second I get one thing wrong, they notice a lot more than every time a guy gets something wrong, and that's how it is in the field too. Some of the women's groups in Boston I'm a part of, same thing tends to be the case, what I hear from them, and they're in jobs ranging from VP of sales to operations director or whatever, and they're still getting questioned a lot about maybe not do this, and then if in a meeting later a man mentions it or echoes it, they're oh, that's a great idea. And so it's just wow, she said it first. And so there's a lot of that, and I like to think that because there's becoming more awareness and conversations about it, that maybe we'll get better. But there are other factors like politics that suggest otherwise.
I'm kind of bummed. I was hoping that you would tell me that no, it's great out there, everyone's open, but
everything's
it's still tough.
Sunshine and rainbows. No, it's constantly started. There are some of the good ones, obviously my co-founder and I, we talk about it a lot because he is a white male, and so we just sort of do the compare and contrast there.
Of experiences
and just conversations where the impressions are or whatever. And most of the engineering nerd friends I have, all of them think that way, whether female or male, just everyone, equal opportunity. And so there's enough people that I'd like to think it changes, but usually the people that aren't changing are the ones that are already insecure about their abilities, and so it's an easier way to pick off people that way.
Right.
So,
what do you think women bring to a team when they are an engineer? Do you think they bring any different perspectives?
Well, I think that we're a lot more stubborn just because we've had to fight harder the whole time. I think that for me, I actually this year on my BattleBots team had my good friend Amanda join, and so now it's not just one lone girl on a team, and I didn't think it would matter at all because we're both kind of tomboyish, we both machine stuff. She's an amazing welder, but it was just nice having another girl that we both have to spend time in the mirror in the morning putting on makeup before going on camera, blah blah blah. And just I didn't think any of those little details matter, but it's nice having another voice there, because also I had one of my other teammates who's a part-timer. He at one point was second guessing her, but she and I spent a lot of late nights assembling our robots, so I knew she knew what she was doing, and so I was able to be that backup voice for her that maybe a man wouldn't have otherwise. It's just no, she knows what she's talking about, so let her do it.
Right.
So.
Now, what do you say to young women out there who are interested in engineering, but maybe they have that feeling that maybe I don't know if I should do this? If they're in high school, what's a good route that they can start to take to kind of dip their toe in the water and see if they like it?
Well, the first robotics stuff is great. If there's no first team at your school, like I always point people to adafruit.com,
Okay.
ADA Fruit. They have a lot of like cheaper build projects, and they have a whole blog that's like from LED wearables to little cars or robots, and just like a lot of different stuff. Like you can do programming, focus projects, like learn a lot about circuit boards, all that.
Nice.
The tools are there. And you can get an entry like base level like $30 to $60, and so it's
nice.
really a lot more affordable. Whereas first to have a high school that does it, I think they're up to like $5,000 or $8,000 for a kit of parts every year, and then on top of that, the registration costs for going to events. And then obviously I mentioned with BattleBots is usually a higher financial point of entry, but the smaller guys aren't. Like we all compete in smaller size combat robots. Like I have a 30-pound hammer bot, and then I'm taking over my teammate's 3-pound Valkyrie, basically called foiled again. Okay. 30-pound ones are probably a couple $1,000 investment, but the 1 to 3-pound ones are only a couple $100. And there's a lot of resources online. The community on Facebook, Combat Robotics, is like very supportive. Gives a lot of how-tos or like different build blogs that you can go reference to like build off of that. And so it's a good way to like try out engineering, and then also like if you're good at math, you'll probably be fine. If you love if you're a creative mind, but you like some sort of walls or structure to it, I think that industrial design and engineering is like the only way forward.
So can we go check out your robot and your new invention, possibly?
Oh, definitely, yeah. The nice thing about Greentown is their neighbor's Artisans Asylum is where my robot lives, and so I can kind of jump between two spaces within 5 minutes.
All right, let's go.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so we are in the makerspace now in Greentown Labs, and we can't show too much. Some of the stuff you might be seeing right now is fuzzed out because this is like pretty top secret stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
You don't want like this getting out before you're ready.
Exactly, yeah. We've been going through the patent hustle and structure and everything, but we're still like slowly getting through that. And then also just the space in general, like everyone has their top secret tech that like, you can visualize or see a thing, but like the special sauce, like most spaces don't allow like cameras or photos or anything. So
talk to me about patents for a second. So, because I know a lot of people watching, they've heard of patents, but so you file for a patent, but then it's like a long process, right?
Oh yeah. So like the way that it first is like the baby version of it is a provisional, and like you can go ahead and write it on your own, pay the government fee, and then it goes off for a year for it to be considered and approved or not. We actually have a patent attorney because they're going to be better at structuring sort of like the outline of what our utility patent, which is the next step after, is. Okay. And the only way you can get to that next level is if your provisional is approved. Okay. And then
you're talking about a year then.
Yeah, that's like, it's sometime within the next year, closer to the end of the year, because it gets so many people filing stuff now, to be able to get that of like now next is the utility, and that's when the price goes like way up, because you're going to need a lot more time with like your lawyers. You need to like just the way that it goes back and forth on how it gets ironed out and what's allowed and what covers in the space.
Right, because the patent office usually comes back with some questions or problems that you need to, it doesn't mean you're done, but it just means you have to answer them. Right. And that takes time.
Yep.
And so do you get support here at Greentown Labs with some kind of lawyers, or do you have to get that yourself?
So we do get a credit from both a regular legal firm, Foley Hoag, as well as Pat, who I don't remember. We've been very fortunate because of our BattleBots connections. We have a patent attorney that we met through BattleBots who has been working on one of our friends' robots being filed and getting it patentable. And so like we go through that route, and we're just very lucky. Like we understand manufacturing. A lot of companies in here don't. A lot of just the resources as your baby company starting to grow. We already had those growing pains with other companies or other startups, and so there are the tools for those less experienced, but luckily we don't have to rely on them too heavily.
Now, why not have this covered with a sheet right now? Like, you're in the middle of all these cool things. What keeps someone from just walking down the hallway here and taking your idea?
I mean, they could. I think that, like, it's sort of, whenever someone talks about a startup, they always say there's a lot of power in the idea, but, like, it's the people that actually do it. Like, I actually, like, space it, can't reference across from here, my pal on Electrona, he's like, your product seems obvious. I'm like, I know. And he's like, yeah. I mean, I'm sure someone thought of it before. I'm like, I know. Well,
but you're making it happen.
Yeah, it's just sort of, I know I can do it. It's sheet metal and incredibly basic robotics. And so being a robotics engineer for the past almost decade, and then doing automotive and aerospace as well, like that's the perfect setup to do something as simple as white goods. Like white goods are like appliances are way lower down on the food chain of what an ambitious engineer decides they're going to go put their brain at.
Now, if there's a young woman out there watching right now and they're like, I want to be an engineer, I want to do a startup, but like has no idea how to do it, is something like Greentown Labs a good place to start?
I would say, like, it's tricky. I would actually say that like this is an incubator, and accelerators are a lot easier because accelerators are going to be more like schooling you hard, have a lot more format of college, and it also really depends on how much experience they have. Like I would, if I did it again, I think like I would have probably read a couple more books before me rage reading them over a weekend for not knowing something.
Okay.
And then besides that, it's just sort of a, like there are a lot of resources out there, and like just Google searches can find them, like learning about angel lists, stuff like that, and just starting to see like the way that companies work, the life cycle of them, and that I was lucky, I guess, like joining a company really early at Greentown, I think would be doable.
So we've got Jonathan here, and he's your co-founder.
Yep.
And so it must be a little bit easier to do it with a team.
Oh yeah. The pit of misery and loneliness and sadness that is being a single founder, like was like even just when you first started, just like having someone to talk to made it so much easier. And then also there is just so much of the business, like I have to do payroll, I have to do making sure all of the legal stuff is in good order, like tax stuff, like we had to register with the state, we had to register with the city, like all this other stuff operations wise.
That sounds overwhelming.
It's a lot, yeah. And so going and doing all that on top of trying to find sales, trying to find funding, building this, designing this. So yeah, having someone that like I know can take care of the building and engineering side, and then anytime like we like want to brainstorm a different way of design or whatever, that's available. And like it's just, I wish I had known sooner not to do it alone.
I think engineers also work better in groups almost, like having someone to be able to bounce ideas off of and have them grow quicker rather than just staring at it and trying to figure it all out from that is, I think it just, two people are more productive together than alone.
Than one.
Yep.
Like the sum of your parts is
Exactly.
bigger.
Exactly.
And so you run your own BattleBots team.
Yes, I do.
And so like, how does that work? Aren't you guys kind of competitors?
So
I might have a theory of what to do if I went against his robot.
and I totally have a theory of what to do against her robot.
How does that work though? Like, because yeah, you guys both probably know each other's robots pretty well, right?
Trash talk.
Oh, yeah. So like this year I know that like when you were doing the new design for Huge, I did help, and I was like, I'm gonna hate myself for this if we go against each other, because it could have been the weak point or
What's
whatever.
the chance that you will go against each other? Is it a very slim chance?
There's about, I believe there were 67 robots this
Yeah.
year, so 1 in 67 just about.
Oh, okay.
But given that we're both very competitive robots as it goes,
You might
it's
both make it,
feasible
like-
that we both
Yeah.
make it far enough in the brackets to fight each other.
Yeah, and we had like I forgot how many fights you had last year, but I know
We had 5 last year,
yeah.
you had like 7 or something.
Yeah, and so as far as how many fights we've had, like it's similar. So then that ranking, there's like a whole crazy power ranking thing that production talks about that is very vague and just in one guy's head, and so whatever he sees that as. And also I like to assume some matches we'll see if it's the case, but a lot of them it just depends on what looks good. And because we're an undercutter, we want to eat wheels that aren't like big, thick polymer, large diameter wheels. We're actually going to have a harder time with a robot with him. So to me, I'm like, well, I don't think it's as likely because it's just not going to look good. We sit like a foot off of the ground. And
I'm 3.5 feet off the ground.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So
Well, all this talk of robots makes me want to go see one. So is there a chance we can go take
straight
a
up.
sneak peek?
Yeah, we
Absolutely,
totally
yeah.
All right, let's go.
cool.
This is our staging space.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so this is our lightweight disc. This is 50 pounds. We usually have them at 65. I have them all sitting in my space. This is the bar that broke last year, the Spirit of Boston. Lockjaw broke it in half
Oh my
because
God.
Just textbook
Welding
fracture.
dissimilar metals.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
and also just the heat treat made it so the metal was brittle. Yeah, we have both foes and friends. All of them are the same basically for all this stuff. And then
This is all just stuff that's been shredded in a
yeah,
fight.
the way that you do it is if you have like parts that get destroyed and ripped off of you, you usually gift it to whoever
Who
took it.
Oh, okay.
So
So this is just stuff that you.
Yeah,
Nice.
so we are regularly known to do more damage to our opponents than we take ourselves. Yeah, like we've
Okay, big question. How do you test this thing?
carefully. So last
But I mean,
year,
this thing spins up to a tremendous. How
yeah,
fast does it
200
go?
miles an hour.
Okay, so how do you? Where do you get to test that? You can't do
Mostly
it here.
just a competition. So we actually last year, before we showed up at competition, we had never done a weapon spin up. Like we use the loading dock here late at night when people aren't around to just like be like, oh, is that safe?
And that's not full speed or anything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just to make sure that it's all functioning.
How do
Yeah.
you
When we get there, they give you a few days with test boxes available to be able to dial in things.
like safe boxes?
Exactly.
Okay.
They're as safe as the normal arena, but they're
Yeah.
probably no bigger than the size of the space.
Yeah.
So my robot being 7 feet wide has a rough time in there because it can barely run in a
Move.
circle.
Right.
But you guys spent hours in the test box just tuning everything to make sure it
Yeah,
was
we have a custom
totally...
clutch that my teammate Fred designed. We knew that like we have a couple different weapon options this year. We wanted to make sure we knew exactly what the spin up time per weapon is because this is our 2-tooth blade, Dr. Teeth. This is Diet Dr. Teeth though, this one's thinner. So basically by reducing the overall thickness by 1/8 of an inch, we're able to save 15 pounds across the piece.
Wow.
Yeah, so this was our turtle mode, I called it, in case we had to go against Tombstone, which would have been armor up everywhere because he's going to hurt us, and then be able to still afford to have a blade that looks like the same one.
How much time do you have when you know that you're going to battle another robot to prepare?
12 to 24 hours. generally.
Yeah,
Okay.
it depends. Like
So
I
you gotta bring
had
everything
2
with
fights
you.
in a day this year, yeah. So.
There's very little making of new parts to fight somebody. But actually it hasn't been on the show yet, but we do get an opponent where we look at all of the different wheel options for Huge and realize none of these work, let's make something new.
Yep.
Bought the plastic, cut the wheels, put it on the robot, and went out and had the fight. But
Yeah.
generally, they have a million different sets
We
of
have
armor
so
for
many
Valkyrie.
spares.
Oh.
So each
Different
of-
disc shapes. You can see also
Exactly.
their saw blade looking one because it's on the sticker
Yep,
compared
that's
to
a
what's existing
Sonic.
there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so
Yeah, you
yeah,
can
this
keep-
is like the thing that's nice about this is also like our different armor panels is all based on who we're going against. I was really for the idea of having a modular defense because no one does that. And so each of these will be either titanium, AR-500 tank steel, or aluminum. We never use aluminum. But like that makes it so we're able to like, I think most of this is titanium just for traveling weight. But we would be able to have all that, and then still we have a spreadsheet saying how much weight would then be additional for that to see if we want to add the extra armor in the front here or on the sides. If we need armor up top, if we're going against like a crusher or hammer or something, we'd have all of those as options to be configurable to be hopefully best case against whoever we're matched against.
Now, a couple questions. One is batteries. So, are you guys using primarily like car batteries, like lithium-ion batteries?
Lithium
or-
polymer batteries, yeah.
Okay.
They're like
Like
our
pouch
brand we use
or-
is Max Amps, and it's just we use
I believe it's small pouches wrapped up in a plastic case
Yeah.
for like
Yeah,
hobby
just the
usage
big
and
cells.
stuff.
But like,
Um,
does anyone go like the Tesla route where you use like cylindrical or no?
Yes.
Yes. they
There's
do?
a few teams that do because they have the better capacity to keep operating while punctured and hurt, whereas the lithium polymer pouch batteries, those, when operated, it's a flamethrower and the robot turns off.
Yeah.
So they're bigger and heavier to do the cells, but they have their trade-offs and stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like the lithium polymers, like if you just end up having like too much current back drawn to them, they're gonna get sad and puffy. And so even though you might have spent like $600 to $1,000 on like a pack, you might just lose it if you don't say have your weapon tuned in, or you don't have a controller that's gonna be able to eat that energy or something.
Thank you so much, Leanne and Jonathan, for showing me your robot and your makerspace. I really appreciate you being here. Let's tell everybody. Now you know. Thanks so much for watching Now You Know. We work hard to bring you videos about things that we think you'll find useful, but we need to know from you what you want to see, so leave your comments below. Also, don't forget to go over to our Patreon page, where for as little as $1 a month, you can watch our Patreon bonus story every week on Tesla Time News. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.